Hello, this is part 3 of my analysis of every Pokemon in competitive Gen 2. Today, I will be having a look at the non-fully evolved Pokemon that get used in GSC NU, GSC UU, and GSC PU. I will not be covering ZU because the metagame has gone through some huge changes, and the tier isn't fully understood or explored at the moment. Parts 1 and 2 are both linked in the description. As usual, I'll be covering Smogon formats and putting a Pokemon's information on screen. Replays will also be shown. Explanations of Smogon formats and competitive Pokemon jargon are in the description. Now, let's begin. Pikachu is currently tiered as UU, but it used to be a big deal in NU and has even shown up a few times in OU. When Pikachu holds the special attack doubling Light Ball, it has one of the highest special attack stats of anything in the game. NU Pikachu was basically impossible to answer defensively. It hit everything in the tier hard. Pikachu destroyed water and flying types with its stab electric attacks, and had Surf to hit ground types like Dugtrio or Graveler. Pikachu was far from unbeatable though. Pikachu is incredibly frail, making it hard to get it onto the field. It was also outsped by several big Pokemon, like Dugtrio, Fearow, and Haunter. It also had to speed tie with Mr. Mime. Pikachu was then moved from NU to UU in 2018. These days, Pikachu is pretty awful in GSC UU. It's incredibly frail, difficult to switch in, and hard to fit onto teams. Pikachu is outsped and destroyed by Pokemon like Scyther, Haunter, Electabuzz, Dodrio, and Aerodactyl. It is also walled by Pokemon like Ampharos or Chansey. Electabuzz or Raichu are more usable electric types, they bring more utility, are faster, and are easier to get in. It is a very risky Pokemon to use. It's the same deal in OU. Pikachu is strong, but using it is very risky. Clefairy has a nice place in GSC PU. Clefairy's claim to fame is access to the combination of Curse, Thunderwave, and Moonlight. Clefairy can paralyze a foe and then boost up with Curse. Thunderwave offsets Curse's speed drop. Clefairy can also repeatedly use Moonlight until a foe gets paralyzed, though it only has 8 uses of Moonlight. Clefairy is a threatening sweeper that doubles as a paralysis spreader. Clefairy pairs nicely with other setup sweepers like Seaking, who appreciate its paralysis spreading. Clefairy should generally stick to its Curse, Thunderwave set. Its stats are too low to justify other sets. Clefairy's bulk can let it down against Pokemon like Seadra. It also dislikes being paralyzed or poisoned, and has only 8 uses of Moonlight. Clefairy struggles to get by Pokemon like Magcargo or Rhyhorn. Golbat is a decently annoying PU Pokemon. Golbat's typing grants it with resistances to Fighting, Poison, and Grass. It is also immune to Ground. Golbat is one of the best answers to Hitmontop. It can also answer Pokemon like Sunflora. Its Stab Wing attack hits Venomoth, Hitmontop, and Grass types super effectively. Access to Haze and Whirlwind lets Golbat combat boosting Pokemon like Noctowl or Seaking. These moves also make Noctowl good into Baton Pass teams. Golbat can be difficult to wear down. It is immune to both Spikes and Toxic, and has Protect for more leftovers recovery. Golbat is offensively weak though, with it struggling to break most Pokemon that it doesn't hit super effectively. Its weaknesses to Electric, Ice, and Psychic also gimp its matchup against some top Pokemon. Golbat really wants to be paired with Spikes, so it's not as splashable as other Pokemon. Gloom is the most viable grass type in GSC NU. Gloom provides its team with a unique and valuable set of tools for one slot. Gloom is an answer to Primeape, Hidden Power Electric Octillery, and Chinchou. Access to Synthesis and Moonlight gives Gloom instant recovery. It can spread paralysis with Sunspore, which not only helps its teammates, but also makes Gloom's Curse or Sword Stance sets more effective. Gloom can also use Razor Leaf or Hidden Power Grass if it wants to hit Rock, Ground, and Water types. Hidden Power Ground has also been used to beat Magnemite. Gloom is a slow Pokemon whose typing leaves it with a poor matchup against several top threats. Gloom invites in Pokemon like Wigglytuff, Pineco, and Dugong, and in general can feel passive. Glum has a bad case of 4 MILFs lost syndrome, having a tough time choosing between Curse, Razor Leaf, Hidden Power Ground or Grass, and Sleep Powder. Poliwhirl was once among the most feared Pokemon in GSC PU. Poliwhirl's claim to fame is its access to the combination of Lovely Kiss and Belly Drum. Poliwhirl can sleep something and then sit up Belly Drum while they snooze. At base 90 speed, Poliwhirl outspeeds many PU Pokemon. When PU was revived in 2020, Poliwhirl was a common and dangerous sweeper. Some even thought it was too dangerous, that it should be banned to PUBL. PU then stopped being played from 2021 to late 2023. Once people started playing PU again this year, Poliwhirl just stopped being used. It almost entirely disappeared from play. Poliwhirl does have its issues. It is outsped by Pokemon like Elekid and Murkrow. It can struggle to set up, and it can fail to OHKO certain Pokemon after boosting. It competes with other setup sweepers like Seaking. Poliwhirl actually ended up dropping to ZU, though it was almost instantly banned from ZU. The complete extinction of PU Poliwhirl was a bit jarring, and it's possible it won't last. Abra is a high-risk, high-reward Pokemon in GSC PU. Abra's special attack stat is the highest in PU. Its Stab, Psychic rips through Venomoth and Hitmontop, the two best Pokemon in PU. Abra naturally outspeeds many PU Pokemon, and has the elemental punches for coverage. Abra can be a big threat with a Substitute plus Thunder Wave set. Substitute eases prediction and Thunder Wave forces paralysis on faster threats like Sneasel or Murkrow. Abra's risk factor mostly stems from its bulk. Its defensive capabilities are next to non-existent. This makes Abra difficult to slot onto teams and means it's hard to get it onto the field. Abra is frequently bullied by Murkrow, who is faster and threatens to KO it with Pursue. Abra also struggles to break Pokemon like Drowsy. Kadabra is an okay Pokemon in GSC UU. Kadabra is one of the fastest Pokemon in UU and it has a powerful Stab Psychic. A Psychic that rips through common Pokemon like Nidoqueen and Haunter. Kadabra can heal itself with Recover and provide utility with Encore. Kadabra uses Hidden Power Dark to hit opposing Psychic types, those being Hypno, Mr. Mime, and Slowbro. Kadabra can be a fierce special attacker, and its access to Encore does give it some utility. It's ultimately a niche Pokemon though. It's very flimsy defensively, especially when it comes to physical attackers, and it's neutered by Paralysis. Kadabra competes with Mr. Mime, who has better bulk and access to moves like Thunder. Kadabra is stuck with Thunder Punch for water types, and it has a tough time fitting the move anyway. Kadabra, like Mr. Mime, tends to exacerbate a team's weaknesses to physical attackers like Scyther. Machoke is a decent Pokemon in GSC PU. Machoke mainly acts as a more offensive Hitmontop, who you pair alongside the top threat. Machoke has slightly higher physical attack, a stronger fighting move in Cross Chop, and some unique moves. It has Rock Slide for flying types and Venomoth, Light Screen to buff its special defense, and Body Slam for paralysis spreading. Cursed Machoke is a fairly threatening sweeper. You can also use a Rest Talk set with Body Slam. Machoke isn't seen that much though. You are still pairing Machoke with Hitmontop, so you amplify your team's weaknesses to Pokemon like Murkrow or Venomoth. Machoke isn't that reliable at beating Pokemon like Drowsy or Venomoth, and has to use the frustratingly inaccurate Cross Chop for Stab. Machoke can feel inconsistent. Tentacool has a niche in GSC NU. Tentacool is very good at using Rapid Spin because of its excellent Pineco matchup. Tentacool is faster, immune to Toxic, 3-shots Pineco with Surf, and takes little from Giga Drain. Pineco can destroy Tentacool with Explosion, but a smart Tentacool user won't let Pineco explode on it when spikes are up. Tentacool matches up worse against Delibird. Delibird is faster and can ruin Tentacool with Thief or an Ice Beam Freeze. Delibird is much rarer than Pineco though, so Tentacool is still a great option for keeping spikes off. Tentacool isn't worth much outside of the spikes game, its stats are just too lacking. At the very least, it can switch into Pokemon like Dugong. Graveler is a superb Pokemon in GSC NU. Graveler is a physically bulky rock type in a metagame full of normal type attacks. It also resists fire and poison. Graveler is NU's most common rapid spinner. It's able to use the Pokemon it switches into as an opportunity to spin away spikes. It outspeeds and two-shots Pineco with Hidden Power Rock. It also resists Pineco's explosion. Graveler packs a punch offensively. Graveler has a good attack stat and nothing resists the combination of Earthquake and Hidden Power Rock. It also threatens to OHKO any non-normal resistant Pokemon with Explosion. These qualities make Graveler almost ubiquitous on spikeless teams. Graveler has some obvious issues. It's a slow Pokemon with poor special defense and 2 4x weaknesses. It is also weak to Ice, Fighting and Ground. Graveler also struggles to break curse normal types like Porygon without exploding. Graveler is also mildly viable in GSC UU. It's able to rapid spin, counter Pokemon like Thunder Granbull and Dodrio, and one-hit KO Scyther with Hidden Power Rock. Ultimately, Graveler loses to most of the Pokemon in GSC UU. It has few good entry points. It's something you will very rarely see when playing UU. Ponyta is a fine Pokemon in GSC PU. Ponyta can work on Spike's teams. Ponyta sits in the same speed tier as big Pokemon like Venomoth, and thus outspeeds many Pokemon. It has Stab Fire Blast for grass and bug types, and Double Edge is a general catch-all option on Rest Talk sets. You could in theory use Hypnosis, but you're better off using Double Edge Rest Talk. Ponyta is a fast Pokemon who hits decently hard. You don't see it that much though. It's frail, weak to water and ground, and struggles to consistently break Pokemon like Seadra, Hitmontop, Magcargo and more. Magnemite is GSC NU's sole Steel type. Magnemite's typing makes it a serviceable answer to Pokemon like Xatu, Fearow and Persian. Offensively, Magnemite is a terror. Its special attack stat is among the highest in the tier, and NU is not a tier well equipped to handle strong electric attacks. Magnemite's Thunder is difficult to switch into, especially when you factor in its Paralysis Ray. Magnemite runs Hidden Power Ice to hit Dugtrio, Pupitar, Graveler and Gloom. Magnemite is a potent special attacker who can switch into some annoying Pokemon. However, it's a slow Pokemon saddled with weaknesses to Ground, Fire and Fighting. Its below average bulk means it matches up worse against certain Pokemon than it might seem. It's not a consistent Curse Wigglytuff answer for example. Magnemite can still be handled offensively by Pokemon like Ninetales, Flareon and Pupitar. Ghastly is the only ghost type in GSC NU. Ghastly has a highly useful normal immunity. Curse normal types like Wigglytuff, Porygon and Dunsparce are unable to damage it. It also takes nothing from Explosion or Self-Destruct, and blocks opponents from using Rapid Spin. Ghastly also has a high special attack stat and access to moves like Psychic, Thunder, Thief and Explosion. Ghastly is overall a below average Pokemon though. Ghastly is very frail, weak to Ground and Psychic, and outsped by several big Pokemon. It also struggles to break many Pokemon without using Explosion. Ghastly is a matchup dependent Pokemon that's hard to fit onto teams. Ghastly fares better in PU though. Ghastly walls curse normal types like Noctowl and Clefairy, and threatens a lot of the tier with Psychic and Thunder. It's good at disrupting teams with Thief and Explosion. Ghastly is still very frail in PU. It also has to be wary of Pursuit Murkrow, though it can one-hit KO Murkrow with Thunder when holding Magnet. Haunter used to actually be an NU, but it rose to UU in 2018 because of how effective it was and still is there. Haunter is a key Pokemon in GSC UU. Haunter's normal immunity lets it wall Curse Rest users like Granbull and Hypno. It can also block a Rapid Spin from Blastoise, though it needs to be careful of Surf. Haunter has Thunderbolt to hit Water and Flying types, and Psychic to hit Poison types like Nidoqueen. Haunter is the most common Explosion user in GSC UU, using the move to blow through Pokemon like Hypno and thus enable its teammates. At base 95 speed, Haunter outspeeds most Pokemon. Haunter's high speed and access to moves like Explosion or Destiny Bomb gives it a great safety net quality. It's good at preventing a dangerous sweeper like Pinsir from running its team down. Haunter doesn't seem like it would do well in GSC UU. It's frail, weak to Psychic and Ground, and can break Hypno, Ampharos, Lantern, and Pilot One without using Explosion. In practice though, it's a very consistent and valuable Pokemon. Drowsy is a useful Pokemon in GSC PU. Drowsy has a plethora of good defensive qualities. Its high special defense, mono psychic typing, and access to Thunder Wave makes it an adequate check to Seadra, Elekid, Hitmontop, Venomoth, Abra, and more. Drowsy can hit Hitmontop, Venomoth, and Ghastly super effectively with its Stab Psychic. All these traits make Drowsy an appealing Pokemon for slower paced teams. With Thunder Wave, Drowsy is great at supporting Pokemon like Seaking and hampering Pokemon like Sunflora. Drowsy is a passive Pokemon though. If it's not hitting something super effectively, it's not hitting it that hard. This can hamper Drowsy when it's going up against Rest Talk variants of Elekid and Seadra. Drowsy invites in dangerous Pokemon like Noctowl and Rest Talk Seaking. Drowsy is also vulnerable to Pursuit Murkrow. Voltorb is a usable Pokemon in GSC PU. Voltorb is the second fastest Pokemon in the metagame. Sneasel is the only thing outspeeding it. It has Stab Thunder for water and flying types, and Explosion to hit everything that doesn't resist normal hard. Voltorb is an effective user of Light Screen and Reflect. It can go first, set up the screens, and then end the turn and bring something else in by using Explosion. Voltorb's effectiveness as a screen setter makes it a good lead on baton pass teams. Voltorb is often overshadowed by Elekid, who is stronger and has better coverage moves. Voltorb's Explosion is kinda weak, it outgoes barely anything. Voltorb is arguably underrated and underused in PU, but ultimately, it is ranked as a ZU Pokemon. Execute is not very good in GSC NU. Execute has a few things going for it. Its typing gives it resistances to Fighting, Water, Ground, and Electric. Execute can switch into Primeape, Chinchou, Dugtrio, and Pupitar. Execute can spread Paralysis with Stun Spore, steal leftovers with Thief, and use Explosion. It can threaten Pokemon like Weezing with Psychic. Execute's Psychic makes it better at hurting Weezing than other grass types. Execute's stats are just too low though. It's slow, its bulk often lets it down, and it doesn't hit very hard at all. Execute has poor longevity. Its typing, which leaves it with weaknesses to Ice, Fire, Poison, and Flying, is also frequently exploited. Execute is one of the better grass types in NU, but it's overall a below average Pokemon. Cubone is the most dangerous baton pass recipient in GSC NU. When Cubone holds the attack doubling Thick Club, it hits quite hard, and after a Swords Dance, it OHKOs most NU Pokemon. If you can baton pass agility to Cubone and then set up Swords Dance, the game is likely over. Agility pass teams are ultimately rare because they have a lot of issues. Cubone can't do much outside of agility pass teams, its stats are just too low. In PU, Cubone is still a massively threatening baton pass recipient. You pass agility to this thing and it can wipe teams out. PU Cubone is also a good standalone Pokemon though. Cubone has an immunity to electric in addition to a poison resistance. It has a powerful Earthquake and threatens paralysis with Body Slam. Rest Talk Cubone with Body Slam is annoying to switch into. It can also run Swords Dance if supported by paralysis. Rhyhorn is an above average Pokemon in GSC PU. Rhyhorn is able to check some threatening Pokemon while posing a threat itself. Rhyhorn's typing makes it a great answer to Curse Noctowl and Clefairy, as well as Pokemon like Rest Talk, Swords Dance, Seaking. It can force these Pokemon out with Roar or respond with its own Curse, boosting its power and strength. Rhyhorn's access to Roar makes it a great Pokemon to have against baton pass teams. Rhyhorn has a good attack stat and unresisted stab combination, Earthquake and Rock Slide. Cursed Rhyhorn can be quite potent, especially if supported by paralysis. Of course, Rhyhorn has the standard rock ground type issues. It's a slow Pokemon with low special defense and 4 times weaknesses to water and grass. Its fighting weakness is also unappealing in a Hitmontop dominated metagame. Rhyhorn struggles to beat Pokemon like Sunflora or Seadra. Rhyhorn has also recently been tried in GSC NU. Its primary appeal in NU is being a normal resistant Pokemon with Roar. NU Rhyhorn hasn't proven itself yet in tournaments, but it could become a part of the tier in the future. Chansey has by far the greatest special bulk in GSC UU. Chansey counters annoying special attackers like Slowbro, Mr. Mime, Lantern and Ampharos. Chansey threatens to obliterate Psychic, Water and Electric types with Present, and has Thunder for Quillfish and Gyarados. Chansey is one of the 2 Pokemon to learn Heal Bell, which lets it rid itself and its teammates of status inflictions. Chansey is also effective at using Counter because of its gargantuan HP stat. Chansey's effectiveness against special attackers and access to Heal Bell makes it a staple on stall teams. Chansey does struggle against big Pokemon though. It invites in and is threatened by Granbull, Piloswine, Nidoqueen and Quagsire. Scyther and Pinsir can also set up on it under the right circumstances. On offensive teams, Chansey is largely overshadowed by Hypno. Chansey is overall a hard Pokemon to fit onto teams, though it does have its good points. And yes, Curse Chansey is mildly viable, though it's got a lot of issues. Seadra is one of the most powerful Pokemon in GSC PU. Seadra has high special attack, decent physical bulk, and good speed. Water is a potent offensive typing in PU. Few Pokemon can safely withstand Seadra's mighty Hydro Pump. It also has Ice Beam for grass types. Seadra can run more offensive sets, using Hidden Power Electric for opposing water types, and Haze to remove status boosts. It can also use Rest Talk if it desires longevity and the ability to absorb status. Rest Talk Seadra is able to abuse Pokemon like Magcargo or Rhyhorn. Seadra is just a difficult Pokemon to answer consistently. It is very powerful and rather versatile. There has even been talk of banning Seadra, citing how powerful it is and how difficult it can be to handle. That isn't to say it's invincible. Seadra has poor special defense. It is outsped and ravaged by the very common Elekid, and can be handled by Pokemon like Sunflora and Sneasel reasonably well. Seadra also has coverage issues on the Rest Talk set. Choosing between Ice Beam and Hidden Power Electric is rough. If you drop Rest and run both moves, you have worse longevity. Eevee is the only Pokemon in GSC PU that can use the combination of Baton Pass plus Growth. Eevee is able to pass special attack boosts to Pokemon like Elekid and Seadra, making them more difficult to handle. Eevee is very rarely worth using though. It is completely worthless outside of Baton Pass. It can't do anything to stop Haze, Whirlwind or Roar users from shutting it down. It's not like passing Growth to Elekid or Seadra is an instant game win too. Other forms of Baton Pass, like Agility Pass to Cubone, are generally more deadly and easier to use. Eevee ended up dropping to ZU, though has since been banned to ZUBL. Porygon is a lethal force in GSC NU. Porygon makes up for its mediocre stats by having a stellar move pool. With the combination of Curse, Stab Double Edge, Recover and Thunder Wave, Porygon beats a high amount of Pokemon. Porygon can paralyze a foe and then spam Recover until they get fully paralyzed. Porygon is also bulky enough to avoid being 2-hit KO'd by most Pokemon. GSC NU doesn't have many good normal resistant Pokemon, and ones like Graveler are actually the ones being checked by Porygon, instead of the other way around. Porygon can also check Pokemon like Statler. Cursed Porygon is a polarizing force that shapes team building around it. A lot of older teams don't hold up anymore because they suck against Porygon. Porygon does get moves like Ice Beam and Thunder, but the tier has too many Pokemon that don't care about these moves, and Curse is just too deadly to give up. Porygon is not invincible. It greatly dislikes status and has to run from fighting types if it hasn't boosted yet. Pupitar is also a relatively common counter to it, with it resisting Double Edge, being immune to Thunder Wave, and countering Curse's defense boost with Screech. Dragonair is, overall, a lackluster Pokemon in GSC NU. In terms of positives, Dragonair learns a variety of useful moves, including Thunder, Thunder Wave, Fire Blast, Ice Beam, Surf, and Reflector Light Screen. It also has resistances to Fire, Electric, Water, and Grass, so it can combat certain Pokemon short term. Dragonair can support its team with both Paralysis and Light Screen or Reflect. Dragonair is limited offensively though. While it can hit a lot of Pokemon super effectively, it really struggles with Pokemon it can't, like Wigglytuff, Statler, Primeape, Hitmonlee, and more. Dragonair has poor longevity, it is rather slow, its bulk isn't spectacular, and it takes spikes damage. It's not that hard to negate Dragonair's utility, and Dragonair is overall a weird and difficult Pokemon to both use and fit onto teams. Bayleaf has a decent niche in GSC NU. Bayleaf has decent stats and a typing that helps it combat certain threats. Bayleaf beats Hidden Power Electric Octillery, Chinchou, and Dugtrio. Synthesis gives Bayleaf longevity. Bayleaf can act as a win condition with Swords Dance. Swords Dance forces the opponent to use PP and can let Bayleaf win late game. Bayleaf can also use Light Screen, Reflect, Toxic, Razor Leaf, and even Growl. Bayleaf's good matchup against Pokemon like Octillery and Dugtrio makes it a common sight on stall teams. It can also work on more balanced teams with the right partners. Bayleaf needs a lot of support. It matches up very poorly against certain top Pokemon, in particular Weezing. Chinchou is a relevant NU Pokemon because of its typing. Chinchou is a water type who is not weak to electric and has Stab Thunder for other water types. Octillery is a very common and dangerous NU Pokemon, and Chinchou is the best counter to it. Chinchou is also an effective Dugong answer. Chinchou is mildly annoying to switch into. It complements its Stab Thunder with Stab, Surf for Ground, Rock, and Fire types. Chinchou typically runs Rest plus Sleep Talk, but Thunder Wave, Light Screen, or even Ice Beam can be used if the longevity isn't as needed. Chinchou is haunted by its low stats though. Its low special attack means it has a challenging matchup against many Pokemon, like Wigglytuff, Restock, Statler, and Primeape, and Hitmonlee. Chinchou is also physically frail. All the previously mentioned Pokemon threaten it, as do the likes of Fearow or Dugtrio. Chinchou used to be a very popular NU Pokemon, but metagame developments in NU like the rise of Restock Statler have caused a decline in its usage and viability. Flaffy is an effective Pokemon in GSC PU. Flaffy is an effective tank. It has respectable special defense and resistances to electric and flying. Flaffy is possibly the best Elekid answer in the tier. It can also beat Pokemon like Murkrow. Flaffy is pretty powerful offensively. Its Stab Thunder hits hard, 3-shotting Pokemon like Hitmontop and Drowsy, who are naturally specially bulky. It also destroys water and flying types. Flaffy carries Hidden Power Ice to hit ground and grass types. Flaffy mostly acts as a slower, bulkier Elekid with a more powerful Thunder. Flaffy is often passed over in favour of Elekid though. Elekid is much faster, very notably faster than Pokemon like Seadra, and has a better move pool. It gets moves like Psychic, Ice Punch, Thief, and Pursue. You can pair the two, but it can make your team seriously weak to Pokemon like Cubone. Flaffy is also slow and doesn't have fantastic physical bulk. Pineco has a very important place in GSC NU. Pineco is one of only 2 Pokemon with a move Spikes. Spikes is arguably the best move in the game. The chip Spikes provides is incredibly useful for offensive and defensive Pokemon alike. Winning games is just easier when you have Spikes up. Certain NU Pokemon, like Xatu, Pupitar, Dugtrio or Rapidash, need Spikes to function at their best. Pineco is more popular than Delibird as a spiker. Pineco has passable physical defense and resistances to fighting and ground. Pineco switches into Pokemon like Primeape, Hitmonlee, and Gloom. It can punish or rest from Pokemon like Statler or Wigglytuff. Pineco also learns Rapid Spin. It doesn't get to use the move much, but it can be game changing if you do spin away spikes. Pineco also threatens to OHKO many Pokemon with Explosion. It's a great follow up to Spikes or Rapid Spin. Pineco is, of course, a staple on offensive Spikes teams in NU. The fact that Pineco, a Little Cup Pokemon with low stats, is ranked as highly as it is, speaks volumes as to how powerful Spikes are. With that said, Pineco is incredibly slow and frail on the special side. Any halfway strong fire move OHKOs it. It is also weak to Flying and Rock. Pineco's low stats can make it difficult to get it onto the field. Pineco can also struggle against Rapid Spin users like Graveler or Tentacool. Houndour used to be a Pokemon you could see in NU, when Xatu was widely recognised as the best Pokemon and the tier was less understood. Houndour was used for its great Xatu matchup. Houndour is immune to Psychic, not weak to Hidden Power Electric or Ice, and 2-hit KOs Xatu with Pursuit as it switches out. Removing Xatu enabled Pokemon like Kingler. These days though, Houndour is basically unviable. It is completely worthless outside of beating Xatu. And Xatu is far from being on every team. Houndour is slow, very frail, and not particularly powerful. Houndour provides nothing defensively outside of beating Xatu, and Xatu isn't a particularly difficult Pokemon to check. The only thing Houndour can do is beat the 6th or 7th best NU Pokemon. It's a completely matchup dependent Pokemon. It should not be used on serious teams. Elekid is one of the best Pokemon in GSC PU. When looking at Elekid's stats, the thing that most sticks out is its base 95 speed. Elekid outspeeds everything except for Voltorb and Sneasel. The ability to outspeed Venomoth, Seadra, Seaking, and Murkrow is highly useful. Offensively, Elekid has Stab Thunder off its respectable special attacks that are for Water and Flying types. Thunder also comes with a 30% paralysis rate. Elekid also has Ice Punch for Grass and Ground types, or Psychic for Hitmontop and Venomoth. Elekid often uses a Rest plus Sleep Toxic, which lets it absorb status and have more longevity. It's able to better wrestle with Pokemon like opposing Elekid or Ghastly this way. It can also use moves like Thief or Pursuit if longevity isn't as desired. Elekid's ability to outspeed and zap Pokemon like Seadra and Seaking make it a very splashable Pokemon. Not much can replicate what Elekid does. Elekid is often seen fighting itself in Rest Talk wars. Elekid isn't without flaw. It is physically frail and isn't reliable at breaking Pokemon like Hitmontop, Drowsy, Sunflora, or Flaffy. Pupitar has an important role in GSCNU. Pupitar's speed and access to Screech gives it a unique role over other rock types. Unlike Graveler or Sudowoodo, Pupitar outspeeds Octillery and 3-shots it with Earthquake. Nothing resists the combination of Earthquake and Rock Slide, and Pupitar can lower defense with Screech. Pupitar naturally has a respectable attack stat. Pupitar's typing lets it combat Pokemon like Fearow, Magnemite or Rapidash. Arguably the most important thing Pupitar does is counter Curse Porygon. Porygon is a very dangerous sweeper with limited counterplay, but Pupitar sits on it. It's one of the only things that can do this. Pupitar can also deal with Curse Wigglytuff or Dunsparce, though it despises being paralysed by the former's Body Slam. Pupitar's positive Porygon matchup is highly appreciated by Spikes teams, who otherwise struggle with Porygon. Pupitar is a natural Spikes abuser with Screech. Pupitar is not a top Pokemon because it has average speed, as well as weaknesses to Water, Ice, Ground and Fighting. Pupitar requires Spikes, so it's not as splashable as other Pokemon.